Greetings, Patrick here. Doing something a little different. Been wanting to do this for a while, but I just couldn't figure out how to put it together. Um, Probably in the future, I'd probably like to get a co-host for this one because this would be fun to go off somebody, bounce off ideas and thoughts and what have you. But for this, I guess you can consider this as a pilot episode. Um, I thought I'd go ahead and talk a little television for a change. I have a ton of TV shows, as you guys have seen, and while some of them are incomplete, that still doesn't take away the fact that there's still great stories within them, and stories that we could talk about, and and go deep dive into, and what have you. So that was my biggest fear. I was like, do I have to get all these series complete before I do something like this? And I realized that I'm not going to do like one series from start to finish. That just takes way too much time. So what I thought I'd do, I just thought I'd go ahead and just grab a random series, watch a random episode, and then come talk about it. Hopefully it'll entertain you, and it'll be along the lines because I'm recording this. I'm not doing this live, so this is also a new thing for me too. So I'm not exactly sure how long these will go. I'm gonna try to do it, like within an hour, or under an hour, because I don't know how long people are gonna really, or even shorter. It might be 35 minutes. I think it all depends on what the show is and what the episode that I watch. But for this one, and this is the one I thought, "Yeah, I should kick this off with this." So obviously, I got most of my series from the library. What else, right? I mean, what else is new? Of course, Patrick, of course. So yes, I have gotten a lot of series from the library. Some I did not. Some I got as presents. Some I found on Hamilton Book. I got a few seasons here and there. Um, but the majority of my series, as I'm looking at it, yeah, it's pretty much a few series came from my buddy Catfish, but and a lot of them came from Family Video, especially when they were closing. I went in there and got a few series, a few episodes, a few seasons of some series. Uh, like I said, this is not going to be a start to follow, a start to end. I've seen there's people who've done Buffy and X Files, and they're still doing them like months later because those series ran for so long. They had over 100 episodes apiece. I think the X Files probably had close to 150 um, because they ran for 10 seasons plus a miniseries. Then you had Buffy, and actually Buffy's going to be coming back, so you're going to have two series of Buffy. But for today I thought I would be talking about the third season of Columbo. So Columbo was part of the NBC Mystery Wheel, and in the early 70s. Now they were the Mystery Wheel was really cool. It was a really good idea. Um, what it was three, sometimes four different characters, and every week it'd be a different character rotation. Like McMillan and wife would be this week, and then Columbo would be this week, and then Banachak would be that week, and it was very successful for the most part. Um, there was Columbo obviously was the hit. That was the big star of the Mystery Wheel. He continued to do movies after the Mystery Wheel ended, but in the early 70s, it was all about Columbo, and the premise is really interesting too. If you haven't seen Columbo, it came out and in the 70s, like I said. Um, Actually, I could tell you what time he came in. I He came in, and actually he came in early. He actually came in 1960, and it was an episode of a show called The Chevy Mystery Show. And the episode was called Enough Rope, but it was not Peter Falk that played Columbo. It was an actor named Bert Freed. But then again, after that, then nothing happened to Columbo until 1968 when Peter Falk came aboard, and he proceeded to do the character from 1968 all the way to 2003. So, like I said, he was definitely the most successful character from the Mystery Wheel. Um, there are some other ones too, including one called Heck Ramsey that came out that would star Richard Boone. Richard Boone played Heck Ramsey, and it's very entertaining to read some of the thoughts about that. That people thought that Heck Ramsey was actually Paladin, who retired. He retired as a gunfighter, and then um, he became basically a mortician, like a like Quincy. He became a forensic scientist, and but Richard Boone said that that was not the case. Heck Ramsey was not Paladin retired, but still a good show. Unfortunately, his series, Heck Ramsey, only did 10 episodes, but they were good. They were really good. But let's go back to Columbo. So the movie I'm going to be talking, and this is the other thing too, they came out as movies. So most of the time it was like 90 minutes per episode. So you had back there in the 70s, you have basically an hour's worth of show and 20 minutes worth of commercials. Not too bad. Not too bad. And it attracted a ton of stars. A lot of people really wanted to be on Columbo. They wanted to be the killer of the week. It was a very popular show among Hollywood's actors because it was so well written and directed for the most part. Um, and so a lot of actors, a lot of really well-known actors, they popped up on on Columbo. I remember the first one I remember watching was the one with Dick Van Dyke. Now, up to that point, Dick Van Dyke had been nothing but wholesome to us. He'd done all the Disney movies. He done, he did a ton of those. He was just wholesome Dick Van Dyke. And then we watched this episode, and here he is. He's drinking, he's smoking, he's killing people, and us kids are sitting there going like, we were sort of traumatized, going like, I thought he was a good guy. Um, but of course, Dick Van Dyke had his moments playing serious roles and did very well. And his episode of Columbo is probably easily one of the top five that when you mention Columbo, you'll hear people talk about it. But for this one here, we're going to be talking about in the third season, and it's the season opener, and it's called Lovely but Lethal. Lovely but Lethal. It was written by Myrna Bercoci and the teleplay by Jackson Gillis, and it was directed by Jano Sorak, who we all know directed Jaws 2. See, I told you there's some power in this, some power players in here. So yes, he was a well-known director, and he directed, of course, this is way before Jaws 2, but this came out on September 23rd, which is generally the season, opens the seasons up back then. September 23rd, 1973. So how Columbo worked was it wasn't a traditional cops, where the cops see the body and then they spend the rest of the episode trying to track down clues and witnesses and what have you to find out who the murderer is in the last frame. No, we know who the murderer is within the first 5-10 minutes of the episode. They show us the killing, and they show us who did it and how they did it. The fun was watching Columbo find those pieces because he didn't know. We sat there and then we just watched him, like him, because we're sitting there like, go check the refrigerator, Columbo, and maybe the next, after a commercial, next thing you know, we're seeing him over there checking out the, the refrigerator. Like, yeah. Um, so it was a lot of fun watching Peter Falk because his Columbo was so disarming, and that was and charming, charming and disarming. And that is what made Columbo such a terrific detective was he's sitting there talking to you like you're his best friend. At least in the first meeting. He comes over there and meets you, shakes your hand, you talk a little bit, talks about his wife, uh, you know, down to home stuff, and because he's gauging who you are and what you're all about. Like, is he, could it be, this person has something to do with the murder, so he, it isn't until like the second or third time that all of a sudden we know that he knows something. Columbo knows something. He just now he's just he knows it. Now he's just got to find it and bring it out of the dirt. And so every time he visits, it puts more and more pressure on the murderer because now they start looking over their shoulder, not only for him, but what do they do wrong? Like how, okay, I must have messed up somewhere. So how do, and it puts pressure on them. And toward the last 15 minutes or so, when they get together, they, and then Columbo breaks it down for them. Says, this is how this is you killed them, and this is how it was. Now, some of the episodes weren't quite as detailed, and in Columbo showing them how he had done it. Sometimes it would just be like a single clue, and then he'd say, "You're under arrest," and it'd be like, well, how did you get there? Um, and going back and looking at some of these stories today, um, you have to really keep in mind and put yourself in the 70s where they didn't have a lot of the technology they have today. I mean, today you watch that murder and you go like, yeah, like that, like no one ever heard of gloves back in the 70s, right? No one ever heard of that. There's so many times you see a crime and their handprints are everywhere. They drink from a glass. There's DNA there. It's like today they'd be popped before the end of the show. But back then they really didn't have that, so it made the investigations a lot more challenging and quite honestly a lot more fun because of who done it or they did do it and how are you going to find out about it. So the first episode I'll talk briefly about here. I'm only going to do one episode. I'm not going to go into more than that. I don't want to do that. The season opener was called Lovely But Lethal. So, and I really honestly I really some of the killers too were interesting, is that they're sympathetic, right? I mean, like in this first episode of Lovely But Lethal, you sort of you can't condone it, obviously. You can't condone it, but you sort of understand where she's coming from. So, cosmetics queen Vivica Fox, played by Vera Miles, um, is she's looking for new products for her line. Sales have not been very good. Money's been starting to, they're starting to get pinched. The main rival, David Lang, his it seems like his company is going to surpass Vivica's as far as number one leading cosmetic company in the world. And of course, that'll put, it's hard being number two in such a competitive market. Um, so it looks like and Vivica has sunk, countless tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, into researching it. It looks like that she may have found a game changer for her company. It looks like a wrinkle remover. So, but it turns out that Vivica's former lover and also a chemist named Carl Lessing, who's played by a young Martin Sheen. Yeah, Martin Sheen. Boy, back then he had a head of hair. I mean, that hair was like, woo, and all not. So yeah, he was. Yep. But he was this is one of his first big TV roles, and he played Carl Lessing, who has the formula, has taken the formula, uh, it's basically stolen it, and he's going to blackmail his former lover. That's not very nice, because he knows how much money that he knows, how much Vivica, where she needs this formula really bad. She needs this product. And initially, she offers him basically herself on a full-time basis, and then she offers him some money, and of course he says no, and in fact he doesn't want to sell it to her because she can't offer the money to it, and so what he wants to do, he's going to go ahead and take it to her rival, David Lang. Now, of course, this sets Vivica off. She has a moment of just rage, and she takes a microscope and she kills Carl. I mean, she didn't mean to. I mean, she was mad, and she just, and when he fell, he hit his head. She was just furious, and but of course, but now he is dead, and so she tries to, and you could tell again, she's not a cold-blooded murderer. She doesn't really know what to do. She tries to cover up her tracks, but she leaves so many behind, and including the one that catches her. Um, so she tries to, and of course, Columbo comes out there, and he starts investigating. Comes out to her. She has she's all about health. Health. So she's got a lot of women who are doing exercises, and other ones are doing cosmetics. I mean, it's a vast company. She has a big complex. And Columbo comes in there with his beat up car, and starts this investigation, and you can see right off the bat that Vivica, she's just like, it's almost like if he asked her, did you kill him? I think that she probably would have said yes right then and there, like, okay, you got me. But that's not Columbo's way. He goes really slow. So we get to see Vivica. We get to see her, go through the, basically watching her world shrink. And it doesn't help that she has an inside person in David Lang's employ. Um, and supposedly this will help her get an edge, on anything that he may have. Um, but then the inside person, well, they hear about the formula, and so the uh, secretary is Shirley. Her name's Shirley, and she's really good secretary, but she has one really nasty habit, and she chain smokes. And they emphasize that because you see her constantly smoking. When you get to her desk, there's an ashtray just full of butts. So we see that. And she's a young lady, and it's just like, wow, okay. So anyway, Vivica and Shirley they go out to talk, and they're at a store, and they're looking at clothes, and whereas Vivica could afford some of these clothes, Shirley cannot, because she's making a very small salary. But she turns around, she tells Vivica, says, "Don't you think this would be a nice dress for me? Like, I really like to have this dress." Like, and Vivica, realizing that she's being blackmailed again. Carl did it the first time. Now here's Shirley trying to blackmail her. And so, obviously, that really, I think she's sort of underneath the pressure. I think Vivica somewhere down the line, I just think that she snapped. But she's smart. She didn't get to be where she was at um, so she goes ahead, and she decides that, well, how are you going to get rid of this Shirley without her? Surely you don't want her to go and talk to anybody, right? Surely I don't. Quit calling me Shirley. Uh, so Vivica decides to take the matters in her own hands, and they say the smoking kills, and it does, if you have a little bit of help to it. Again, it's really hard to really, you're sitting there going like, man, is she a super bad person? I mean, she got blackmailed twice. It's like you're sitting there going like, yeah, I could understand it. I don't think you should have done it, but I sort of understand where you're coming from. Um, so now the pressure is really on because Columbo is, he notices Vivica's is itching. She's itching her hand. Even though she has gloves on, she has itching her hand. And Columbo himself is itching. And so he's curious. He's like, well, there's something going on here. And then they start with this, Columbo discovers that he has poison ivy. Um, and poison ivy doesn't grow in California. And so they realize that that could be important, but you don't know how it's important. Well, he doesn't know how it's important. Um, so the it moves on to the end of the episode, and then we find out what exactly how did Columbo figure it out. And it's interesting. It's an interesting twist in how it gets out, it's and when he does confront her, you can see the relief on her face. I mean, she's like I said before, she wasn't a cold-blooded murderer because we see those later on. We see them like, damn. But sometimes it's just a tragic accident that if they had just called the police and talked to them, maybe get a good attorney in there and just sit there and say, hey, he's blackmailing me, he threatened me, I felt threatened by him. I'm a single woman in a house with a man. Probably back there, probably would have been, but she panicked and she tried to cover it up, and that was her undoing. There was a cool Easter egg in this, of course. Um, Vera Miles also appeared in the gateway to horror movies, as we know, as she appeared in the movie Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. So very well known, and in the episode, um, her character Vivica says to Columbo that she couldn't even hurt a fly, and that line is actually uh, was spoken by Anthony Perkins in Psycho when he played Norman Bates. So it was a little homage to the master and to Psycho. Uh, like I said before, I should mention too about the guest cast here. So not only do we have Vera Miles, Martin Sheen, early role, David Lang, the competitor, he did not have a big role, but it was effective, and that was played by Vincent Price. And yes, Vincent Price played it straight. His character was nasty. Um, he is not a nice guy. In fact, if he had been the murderer, I probably would have been more. It would have been more fitting, to tell you the truth. But yeah, and you see you see David Lang and Vivica Scott. You see them, you know, having word exchanges. And they're saying it with smiles on their face, but behind their back they got that knife ready to end it. Two very viable competitors for this business. Um, and the secretary, Shirley, was played by a actress who I'd never seen before, Cyan Barbara Allen. And yeah, she was very smarmy. She played her part really, really well. Um, I felt sort of sorry for her though with the smoking part though, because every scene she was in, she was lighting up or putting it out, and it's like, man, that's rough. Uh, but it fit her character. Her character really mousy and really nervous, and thought she was clever, and she really wasn't. Um, the direction by Janelle Serac was very crisp. I will have to say that it was very crisp, and the episode moved along quickly. I know sometimes people would complain about some of the shows would drag a little bit, but police shows sometimes they drag. But I don't know. I mean, at least in the early episodes of Columbo, they were snappy. They were snappy. Now, each season last had us, like I said, each normal television season back in the 70s would have between 22 to 25 episodes. That was not the case with the Mystery Wheel. Everyone was a movie. So what they would do, they would just film. I think for the third season of Columbo, I think they had 8 episodes, 8 or 10 episodes. Um, this came out. This set right here, they came out on Universal. And I do believe you can get this still today. I do not think this is out of print. I actually got the first 5 seasons of Columbo at the library, and there were more. I was surprised. I didn't realize there were so many. But yeah, I think there's. I want to say there's close to 100 episodes throughout the time that Peter Falk took on the character, and the show ended in 2003. I will say this too, and I will say this too. I'm so glad that they did not do with Columbo as they did with Perry Mason. After and also, and after Perry Mason died, or Raymond Burr died, he played Perry Mason. They would bring in different characters, different defense attorneys, and they would play it underneath the new Perry Mason movies, but with new faces. I just feel like I don't know. You guys can tell me in the comments. I just felt like when Peter Falk retired, when Columbo retired, um, that was it. You didn't do any. You don't need to make. You don't need to remake it. And it's impossible to anyway, because what made the series so successful, you couldn't get away with today because the technology is, it's it's so advanced that if you look at some of these episodes, and like I said, you watch them through today's eyes, and you just see how many mistakes they made. They would be busted within a matter of hours for most of these crimes. It wouldn't be, but it would be very short. But back there in the early 70s, they didn't have the technology, so the mystery element really works well here. Um, the story itself is really it's fast. It's well written, and they really got the casting down right. I can't tell you about that. That's what really made the Columbo series really work well. I mean, you have so many different well-known characters in this season alone. And if you want to hear more about season 3 of Columbo, when you want me to talk about it some more, just put that down in the comments too, and I will. Right now, I don't know what I'm going to be doing after this. I just want to see what the reaction is. If it's people like it, then I'll do something else. But if they don't, well. But they had some other people in here. They had Donald Pleasance. They had Jackie Cooper, and they had Barbara Culp. Sometimes they had multi killers. Sometimes the killers would come back as a different character, like Jack Cassidy did. Jack Cassidy, I think he did 3 or 4 episodes of Columbo where he played the killer. He was the perfect bad guy. Wow, he was so smarmy and so arrogant, and he was perfect. He was a perfect foil to Columbo, no matter what character he played, because they pretty much played the same one with just slightly different twists. But he was great. Of course, Jack Cassidy. he's the father of David Cassidy, and he was married to Shirley Jones, and he died horribly. Unfortunately, he was burned alive in his house. He fell asleep with a lit cigarette and died a horrible death. Um, but we still got Columbo here to talk about. Um, so he's another good bad guy. And there's some other ones like this. Of course, what really makes this fun too is seeing the up and comers like Cyan, Barbara Allen, and Martin Sheen. Just cutting their teeth into the business and doing guest roles on shows like this. And it was good to see veteran actors also get work. Vera Miles was very good in this, and of course, Vincent Price. This is probably something that he really enjoyed doing. And I had mentioned this too, that he needed to do more of these, but toward the end of his career, he was doing much more comedy. And I really don't ever feel like that's really what he wanted to do. He has such a great reputation as being a horror icon. You see a Vincent Price movie like The Fly, or Mr. Sardonis, or any one of these movies that he did, House on Haunted Hill. He played a great villain, and sometimes he played sometimes he didn't know who he was, but toward the end of it, he roles like this became less and less for him, and he started doing more and more comedic roles. All right. That will do it for this episode. 30 minutes, 31 minutes. All right. So this is my first one of, I don't know, I put TV thoughts for this one. I'm not sure what the title will be. Again, I'll take your suggestions on that. But I had a lot of fun doing this. Unfortunately, there's no special features on here other than an episode of Mrs. Columbo, which we'll talk about that in a different episode of this series. But yeah, Universal Studios um, comes in 2 discs, and I don't think it's on DVD. I don't think it's on Blu-ray. I suspect it's not on Blu-ray. So, but I do believe it is out there. You can get it on from universal.com. But thanks for watching, and I enjoyed doing this. I hope this went well, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.